are Locked On Seahawks, your daily Seattle Seahawks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, 12. This is Corbin Smith, your host for Locked On Seahawks. It's a special edition Saturday episode. Wasn't able to record on Blue Friday per usual. A lot to discuss. Not a great night for the Seahawks at all on Thursday. Lost a game and obviously lost a superstar in the process for the next several weeks. Going to be breaking down the game as well as the injury and answering your mailbag questions as we head into a mini bye before Seattle's next game in Pittsburgh. Thanks for making Locked On Seahawks your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms. Now for your lead story here on Locked On Seahawks. Over the past 9 years, there has been one constant for the Seahawks, and that's been number 3 under center. Russell Wilson has started 149 consecutive games. Ever since starting in week 1 as a rookie, third-round pick out of Wisconsin, he beat Matt Flynn out for the job, started immediately for Seattle. Never has missed a single start. Unfortunately, that streak is going to end next week in Pittsburgh. Russell Wilson suffering a ruptured tendon in his right middle finger during Seattle's 26-17 loss to the Los Angeles Rams on Thursday night. The injury happened in the middle of the third quarter, and we see this time and time again. Quarterbacks at the end of their follow-through, hitting their hand on helmets. In this case, Wilson hit his hand on Aaron Donald's arm. And as soon as the play was over with, I was in the press box, looked up at the TV, and immediately noticed Russell Wilson, the tip of that finger was twisted in the wrong direction. And so I thought immediately that's, at best, that's probably a dislocated tip of his finger. Maybe they can pop it back in place and he'll be okay. But he went to the sideline. Trainers were working with him. He came back in for one more possession, made one short throw to Colby Parkinson on like a tight end screen. That was about as far as he could throw the football. He just could not grip the football properly with that injury. And turns out it was a pretty significant one. Geno Smith came in and played the rest of the game. Wilson had surgery on Friday to repair the ruptured tendon and a dislocation fracture, so they had to put some screws into the finger as well. It's looking like he's going to be out minimum 5 weeks. The first game that I think he has a realistic chance to be back based on what I've been told is week 10 against the Green Bay Packers. Seattle will be coming off of a bye week. They do have a few extra days with this injury happening on a Thursday night game, so maybe that gives him a shot to be back, but he could be out as many as 6 to 8 weeks, and depending how the next couple of weeks play out, the Seahawks might decide not to rush him back. If it looks like they're out of the playoff picture, we'll see what things look like in a few weeks. Who knows? Russell Wilson eventually could get shut down. There are a number of things that could happen here. Obviously, number 3 wants to get back. This is Seattle's most important player. They want to get him back on the field, but they also want to protect him from himself. This is an extremely motivated player who has never dealt with this before. He's never had a significant injury that has kept him from playing. He did have a knee issue back in 2016, but he was able to return the next week, and he played through it, continued to play at a high level. This was not an injury that he was going to be able to do that with, though. So he needed to have the surgery, and now he's out minimum 5 weeks. I would not expect to see him in the next 3 games. It's going to be the Geno Smith show. So what does that mean for the Seahawks moving forward? Well, if you're looking for a silver lining, Seattle is entering the softest part of his schedule, in my opinion, at least. They're playing a Pittsburgh Steelers team next week that is still a solid team because of their defense, but they've really struggled on offense. Ben Roethlisberger's had a rough season so far. That is a winnable game for the Seahawks. Then after that, they have back-to-back home games against the Saints, who could be pretty tough. They've been up and down this year. And then they play the winless Jacksonville Jaguars on Halloween. It is possible Seattle could win 2, even all 3 of those games if Geno Smith can play the way that he did in the fourth quarter on Thursday night. He exceeded all expectations. And obviously, it was just 1 quarter. Teams now have some film to be able to prepare for him, but Seattle has confidence that Geno Smith is going to be able to play well in the confines of their offense. They're confident in the weapons they have around him. It's much more than he ever had during his time with the New York Jets. So if they can just get decent play from Geno Smith, and their defense is going to have to pick things up, but if they can do that, they have a chance to be 4-4 or even 5-3 coming out of this stretch. And that changes things. If Russell Wilson can come back in week 10 and the team is at 500 or still above, they've got a chance to get back to the postseason. You obviously want your star quarterback back. If they somehow go 1-2 or 0-3 in the next 3 weeks, though, and they fall to a record of 3-5 or even 2-6, then obviously that is going to change some of the thinking. The Seahawks at that point, they might consider, hey, Russ, we're not making the playoffs this year. We're not going to rush you back. Obviously, you want to play, but we're not going to rush you back because there's no point to. So there's going to be some interesting discussions that are going to be had if that happens. There's a lot of different scenarios that could play out, but the one certainty, we know the Seahawks for the first time since 2011 are going to be playing games without Russell Wilson for at least the next 3 weeks, if not longer. And I think that makes this the biggest challenge. And we know Pete Carroll, this has been a challenging year for him with the way the defense is playing, but this is an opportunity for him to show that he is still one of the best coaches in football. If he can make something out of this with his backup quarterback, get the defense playing better. This is a challenge that he has not had since really his second year back in 2011 when that team really struggled. He has a chance to show his coaching chops, as do all of his assistants. This is a great opportunity for Shane Waldron. And quite frankly, Geno Smith looked pretty comfortable in his offense on Thursday night. Again, a very small sample size, but this is an opportunity for the coaching staff with an incredible challenge in front of them to really show what they're capable of doing and earn some trust back from the fan base. There's a lot of fans that have been upset with the way coaching has played out this year. This is an opportunity for that group to step up, just like everybody else that's healthy right now, to make up for the loss of Russell Wilson. And they're going to be trying to stay in the win column and keep themselves in the playoffs race so that when Russell Wilson can return, they can bring it back. And maybe they've still got a chance to do some damage in January. But for right now, with the way the defense is playing and stuff, there's no guarantee that that's going to happen. So certainly a time of uncertainty. It's a foreign situation for everybody that's been on the team for the last couple of years, for the coaching staff that's been here for a long time. Not having Russell Wilson available is completely abnormal. So this is going to be a very tough, but at the same time, intriguing next 3 weeks to see what Geno Smith can do, what everybody around him can do. And this football team is going to try to make it through this stretch, winning most of their games, see if they can get Russ back by week 10, week 11 at the latest, and hopefully still be in a position where they can compete to get into the postseason. When I come back in the second quarter, I'm going to tackle your questions in our weekly mailbag segment. You're listening to Locked On Seahawks podcast, Saturday edition, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. We're back and better than ever. All eyes are on the gridiron as teams are back for another football season. And as always, BetOnline is your number one spot for all the pro and college football action this season. They've got a new updated site with an updated interface, even more odds, props, and contests. BetOnline continues to be your top source for everything football. Make sure to check out their website or use your mobile device and sign up today to receive 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Don't forget to use the promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From football, boxing, and basketball, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. Welcome back to the Locked On Seahawks podcast. It's Saturday, having a rare weekend show. Couldn't do a show yesterday due to a procedure. My apologies for that, but give you some Seahawks content to enjoy on the weekend. And with that being said, it's a weird week because there were 2 games in the span of 5 days. So why not have 2 mailbag segments? And obviously coming out of Thursday's loss to the Rams, fans had a ton of questions. So was able to pick 7 or 8 of them. Couldn't answer all of them because of time constraints, but going to tackle as many as I can here in the second quarter. So let's get rolling. First question coming from Pratik. Chicken or the egg? Are we unable to generate QB pressure because our coverage doesn't hold up, or our coverage doesn't hold up because we can't generate enough pressure? So it's interesting. If you had asked me this question a couple weeks ago, I would have said this is on the coverage more than the pass rushers, because especially that Minnesota game, Kirk Cousins was getting the ball out so darn quick that there was no way that the pass rush had any chance to get home. But you look at this last game, I felt like Matthew Stafford held on to the football significantly longer than what Kirk Cousins did a few weeks ago. And that doesn't surprise me. Different style quarterbacks. Matt Stafford wants to take those deep shots, and he took some of them against the Seahawks. But I really thought that the pass rush was going to step up more than what they did. And that's obviously a very good Rams offensive line. Stafford had been sacked 3 times in their first 4 games. So they've been very good at protecting the quarterback. Run game's been decent. It's a really solid offensive line. But especially early, it seemed like the front line was getting some pressure on Stafford. And then second half, it just didn't happen. And the mixture of the quick passes and just honestly seemed like by the end of the game, they were fatigued for the most part. They were able to make some plays. Carlos Dunlap had that pass deflection that forced a punt late. It gave Geno Smith a chance to potentially go down and win the game. Didn't end up happening. But overall, you're just not seeing enough consistency from that group. And I really think that is hurting the back end because you can only cover for so long, especially against receivers like Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp. And I think really the linebackers were affected by that as much as anyone going against those crossing routes. And so not being able to get home certainly did not help. So at this point, I think it's leaning more towards the pass rush because I had really high expectations for that group. Didn't know what to expect at corner with the changes they made there and then moving on from Ahkello Witherspoon so quickly. That group has just been maligned ever since week one, and they're still trying to figure things out. The pass rush has some proven people up there to get after the quarterback, and aside from Darrell Taylor having 4 sacks in 5 games, they really haven't had anybody else that's really emerged that's been able to rack up sacks and bunches and get consistent pressure. So I'm actually going to lean more towards the pass rush than I am coverage at this point being a bigger problem in terms of that relationship. John Laybourne, now that Pete and John got Russell Wilson injured by not addressing the offensive line problems, do you think it will be a priority moving forward? So I'm just going to disagree with the point of this question. I don't think the Seahawks got Russell Wilson hurt by not addressing the offensive line. That was a freak play that Russell Wilson got hurt on. Now, if you asked me this a few years ago, if he would have got hurt with the way the line has played consistently throughout his career, then we could certainly make that argument. But Aaron Donald, Russell Wilson just happened to have his hand hit in the right spot in his follow-through, trying to hit Tyler Lockett on a deep ball. And we've seen it. Matthew Stafford hit his hand on a Seahawks player's helmet. It happens consistently. I'm surprised it hasn't happened more to Russell Wilson, to be honest with you. But I feel like the offensive line was maybe one of the best parts of the game Thursday night for the Seahawks. One of the reasons Geno Smith played so well was that front line was protecting him and he had time to go through his progressions. I thought they did a heck of a job for most of that football game. So I think in this particular instance, I would be against the idea that the Seahawks got him hurt because of their O-line. That was just a freak play, and sometimes that happens in the sports. It happens in all sports, but in particular, quarterbacks following through like that and getting injured. I wouldn't blame the line. And I think the moves that they have made, I mean, going out and getting Gabe Jackson, and you can make arguments about center, but Kyle Fuller has improved the last couple of weeks. I thought he had a decent game on Thursday night, at least in the pass protecting department. I feel like the line was the least of their problems in this particular football game. So I'm not going to go that way. You know, some people might argue, well, it's the chronic hits he's had year in, year out. That did not cause this injury. So I don't think that's the problem. And I think the Seahawks have made some moves to try to prioritize that front line. I don't know about not extending Dwayne Brown when they had the opportunity before the season. That might be something they end up regretting, but overall, I feel like Schneider and Carroll and those guys, they have emphasized the offensive line for the most part, the center position being the one exception. And I don't think that's what caused Russell Wilson's injury on Thursday night. Kong tweets, based on how the defense is playing right now, is it safe to say last year's turnaround was more about the teams and quarterbacks they played rather than changes made by the coaches? I think at this point, that is a very fair argument to make because the last 9 teams that the Seahawks played last year, only one of them has the same quarterback starting this year. And a number of those teams were not playoff teams. So that does make you wonder, did that 180-degree switch happen because of who they were playing against? I think it is a big part of it. It's really making me wonder now, seeing how much this defense has regressed again, playing against some pretty solid quarterbacks here during the early stages of the 2021 season. I don't want to completely discount what they did because I do think Carlos Dunlap's arrival really made that pass rush. It bolstered that group. And Jaron Reed was playing really well. I think they're missing him right now with his interior pass rushing ability. The secondary was playing much better, but now they don't have Shaquille Griffin. DJ Reed is back at the right side, but now they're trying to figure out the left side. I mean, there are some big differences. I thought the defense improved a lot in the second half a year ago, and I think some of that was reality. I think some of it was enhanced by who was playing quarterback on the other teams, though. So I think that is a fair argument at this point. Little McStew, hey, Corbin, do you think not having KJ Wright and his skill experience in front of Jamal Adams has had any impact on Adams' play? You know, I don't know. I mean, I think losing KJ Wright has had an impact on this defense, especially defending screens. there have been plenty of things that have been missing with him not out there. And I'm starting to think that was a pretty significant whiff by the Seahawks not bringing him back. At the same time, I don't think there's necessarily a correlation between his departure and Jamal Adams not doing what people are expecting him to do. I don't think there's a correlation there, really. I think Jamal Adams, the big issues he's having right now, I'm wondering if he's thinking too much out there, because it just seems like he's kind of playing a step slow on a lot of things that he's trying to do out there. He doesn't look comfortable always back in coverage. I thought he had a good coverage game against the 49ers. So seeing what happened on Thursday night, I think that long ball to Deshaun Jackson, there's some blame to go on him because he didn't track the football, but that was a tough thing with that ball being underthrown the way that it was. I think Sidney Jones trailing might have been the bigger issue on that play, but the touchdown he gave up to Higbee certainly got roasted going outside, did not play with the aggression and the assertiveness that you hope to see from a star player like Jamal Adams. But I wouldn't say that his play has been impacted too much by KJ Wright not being there. I think Wright's departure has definitely impacted the defense. I just don't think that's one way that it really has. JB tweets, what happened to the run defense? What happened to the run defense? That's a really good question. You go into the game Thursday night, and they were in the top 3 in the NFL for most rushing yards given up, yards per attempt. They have been atrocious in both categories. And really, it's been like the offense where it's been very hit and miss. There have been halves of football where they have done a great job stopping running backs, and then they have turned around and gotten destroyed. The Titans game, for example, Derrick Henry went off after halftime. They had him down to 3.2 yards per carry in the first half. On Thursday night, it was very similar. The Rams were averaging barely over 3 yards a carry in the first half. And then the second half, Darrell Henderson went off and had a big half, busted a 29-yard run. The Seahawks were getting gashed. It just seems like either they're getting fatigued, they don't have a lot of depth in the interior of their defensive line, which I think is starting to show in these games. And I think the other issue, they have not had consistent gap play for their entire front seven. Even the corners, Trey Flowers didn't play that long Derrick Henry touchdown run very well. So they've had their share of issues with their gap fits, which have created problems as well. They just haven't been as disciplined as you would expect a run defense. That's really been a problem for the entire defense, has been the discipline aspect, the communication errors, not doing their assignments correctly. I've noticed that a lot more in the second half of games from the defense, and that's not acceptable at this stage. The Seahawks have got to figure that out, because if you can't stop the pass, which the Seahawks have not been able to do that, and you can't stop the run, I mean, what do you do? I mean, the offense can run their entire playbook at will on you. So last year, their run defense was really good. Top 5, they have regressed tremendously. They need to get that figured out really quickly, and I think that would help their pass defense a little bit if their run defense played closer to the level it did a year ago. There's just so much for Pete Carroll and Ken Norton Jr. to try to figure out, because this defense is historically bad right now. 2 years in a row that they've qualified for that early in the season. Not a good look for a coach that's supposed to be one of the best defensive coaches in the NFL. Christopher tweets, can we say that the trade for Jamal Adams was a mistake, and to shift how poorly John Schneider and the front office have drafted in the last 5 years? Well, you can make arguments about the drafting. The misses on first rounds like LJ Collier, Rashad Penny. Some are starting to wonder about Jordan Brooks. I don't think he's playing near as well as I thought he was going to this year. I don't know how much of that is his fault. I thought he looked really good in training camp, had one good game early in the regular season. He just hasn't looked right out there, though. He doesn't look like he's necessarily confident in the way he's playing right now. But those early round picks, they have missed on a bunch of them. And so it's kind of one of those situations where it hasn't caught up with them the last couple of years. This year, it seems like it has, where they could have had some really good players with a few of those picks, and they missed. And then, of course, giving up 2 first rounders for Jamal Adams does not look good right now. But I will say this, it is still very early. And if the Seahawks can just maximize his skill set, I don't think they are right now. And Pete Carroll was trying to defend how little they're blitzing him, saying we can't blitz him that much, whatever. Yes, you can. Jamal Adams is an outstanding blitzer. That is maybe the biggest strength in his game. Use the player's strength, and it's something they've struggled with. They didn't do that with Jimmy Graham. Percy Harvin, the brief time he was in Seattle, they didn't necessarily know what to do with him. You can't do that with a player you gave up 2 first-round picks for. And I think Jamal Adams is an incredible talent. I really do. And I think he can make that trade worth it if you are using him correctly. But I don't know that I like him. And there are people that disagree with me on this that know more than I do about secondary play. I just don't think him playing 2 deep coverage most of the game or even single deep coverage. I just think you're wasting an incredible talent doing that. And that's just not something he's overly comfortable doing. He's capable, but that is not a strength in his game. So the Seahawks have to figure out how to maximize his skill set. And if that means you're making him a linebacker, then so be it. Make him a money linebacker, which is really a safety in today's NFL. There's things they can do to really maximize his skill set and use him on tight ends in coverage and stuff like that. I just feel like they're not doing that right now. Again, there are people that know more about secondary play than what I do who would disagree, but that's my viewpoint on this. And I still think that Jamal Adams can be a game changer for these guys, but he's got to turn it up. The Seahawks have to do a better job putting him in a position where he can play at his best. Last question here. Burner tweets, any idea what the plan with the remaining cap space is? Any notable players available? Well, Geno Atkins is still out there. They had him in for a visit for the start of the regular season, and he has not signed with anybody. The defensive tackle depth they mentioned earlier looks like it's an issue right now. Maybe they could sign him. But otherwise, I don't know where else you're going to go. They can't get Gilmore now because he got traded to the Panthers and didn't get cut by the Patriots after all. Maybe that was somebody they could consider. Richard Sherman's been picked up by the Buccaneers. I really don't know who else is out there that is going to be worth signing that is going to help this football team. A lot of the big impact guys have been signed and are already on rosters. So it feels like unless they're going to make a big trade, that's the one thing that would maybe make some sense. But at the same time, they already are without a first-round pick right now. You might even want to argue if they lose a couple games here in the next few weeks, they might start looking at some players they can send off to other teams and start rebuilding a little bit. That is something that could very well happen if they keep losing games. So very, very much a fluid situation right now with what the Seahawks can do with that cap space. And it might even be larger if they end up moving some players down the road. At 2-3, with Russell Wilson being out, there's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of question marks right now for the entire organization, both short and long term. When I come back in the third quarter, going to share some takeaways, the good, the bad, and the ugly from Seattle's 26-17 loss to the Rams on Thursday Night Football. You won't want to miss it. Thanks for listening in. You're listening to the Locked On Seahawks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Did you know that Built Bar has 9 delicious flavors? When you talk to a Built Bar fanatic like myself, we're definitely passionate about our favorite flavors, whether it's coconut, mint brownie, peanut butter brownie, my personal favorite, or salted caramel. There's something for everyone. I promise that. If you haven't tried all the flavors, you can get a mixed box where you'll get 2 of each of the 9 flavors. You definitely should give that a shot if you haven't tried it. So many delicious flavors. And Built Bar flavors are not just the best tasting, but they're healthy too. Most of the flavors have 17 grams of protein, only 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, and 4 grams of net carbs. So you've got amazing, delicious flavors that are tasty and healthy. Go to BuiltBar.com and use the promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off your first order. Use the promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at BuiltBar.com. Welcome back to the Locked On Seahawks podcast, Saturday edition. I'm your host, Corbin Smith. Glad to have you listening in. On Thursday night, the Seahawks fell to 2-3 on the season, and they were up 7-3 at halftime against their division rivals. But unfortunately, the second half, things just kind of unraveled for the Seahawks, kind of unraveled for them. They ended up giving up 3 touchdowns on defense, and then the offense, really until Geno Smith got into the game in the fourth quarter, wasn't able to get much going either. You had the Russell Wilson injury middle of the third quarter that sucked the life out of the crowd and really the sidelines as well. But there were a lot of good things in this game. So I'm going to start with a positive takeaways here. There were a lot of good things. And the first thing I'm going to say is Geno. It was crazy hearing in the press box the fans getting behind Geno Smith and what he was able to do out there. I've seen Geno Smith do some great things in the practice field, so I was not surprised to see him go out and complete a few passes. But for him to go out there, he had not played a meaningful regular season drive since 2017. For him to go out there, the Seahawks have the ball on their own 2-yard line. And what does he do? He completes all 5 of his passes for 72 yards. He leads the Seahawks down on a 98-yard touchdown drive, hits DK Metcalf for a 23-yard strike. It is suddenly a 2-point game. I really thought at that point the Seahawks have a chance in this football game if their defense can just get a stop. And we'll get to that more here in a minute. But Geno Smith finished the night 10 for 17, well over 100 yards, a touchdown. He threw one interception that was not his fault. Tyler Lockett tripped up. He may have been interfered with on that play as well. No flag was thrown, but that was really not his fault. He was trying to make a play. Lockett fell down, made it an easy pick for the defender, but he did a lot of great things. He played with confidence and poise. You could see it in the press conference after the game, how confident he is. And he's always had the talent. This is a guy who was a second-round pick for the New York Jets back in 2013. Really big arm, put up monster numbers at West Virginia, but they never had weapons around him with the Jets for the most part. And we know the Jets have struggled to develop anyone at the quarterback position. There's always been talent there, and he's athletic. He ran the ball fairly well on Thursday night as well. So the Seahawks can run really their entire playbook with him in the lineup. So there is reason to believe the Seahawks can get by for a few weeks with Geno Smith, and maybe he'll end up thriving if he could play like he did Friday night. That was a fantastic quarter, and he really looked comfortable in the offense. Shane Waldron looked comfortable calling plays for him. So we'll see what he's able to do. He's going to get the next couple starts no matter what, because Russell Wilson won't be returning for at least 4 or 5 weeks. So he's going to get a shot to show what he can do in this offense. Throw the ball to DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett. They got Gerald Everett coming back. Will Dissly caught a nice pass from him. So there were a lot of encouraging things to see from Geno Smith. He was the biggest plus for me in this football game. Also, I shouted out to him earlier, but the offensive line played fantastic. Russell Wilson very rarely was under duress for the 3 quarters that he played in this game. There were a few times Aaron Donald was able to get hits on him, but for the most part, he had a clean pocket to work with. And then when Geno Smith came in, it's like the line was like, we have to be even better. They did a fantastic job of shutting down a really good defensive line for the Rams and giving Geno Smith a chance to go through his progressions. That was one of the reasons that he was so successful in this game. So shout out to the line. Pete Carroll shouted out to him after the game, as he should have. That was one of the real bright spots in this contest, in my opinion. And of course, on the outside, DK Metcalf against Jalen Ramsey. There's been so much talk about Jalen Ramsey owning DK Metcalf, and I never fully bought into that because I've watched the game tape. First 3 or 4 times they went against each other, and there were times DK Metcalf had won that matchup, and either Russell Wilson did not throw the ball to him or he overthrew the pass. I don't know how you overthrow DK Metcalf, but it happened a couple of times. In this game, though, that did not happen. Metcalf ran a filthy pivot route that ended up making Ramsey look silly. Russell Wilson got the ball to him downfield, and then he beat Ramsey inside in a skinny post for a 19-yard touchdown. That's what gave Seattle the lead before halftime. So he really got the upper hand in this matchup against Jalen Ramsey. And Ramsey made his play, tipped a pass that was intended for Tyler Lockett, ended up getting intercepted in the first half. Russell Wilson's first pick of the entire season. So he made his plays, but I thought DK Metcalf had the upper hand against in this game, and that's got to really be a boost to his confidence. Not that he doesn't have confidence anyway, but that is one corner he's had his share of issues against in the past and looked very comfortable and did a nice job against him in this football game. On the defensive side, there's not a lot of positives, but I got to give a shout out to number 6 back at free safety, Quandre Diggs, with his second interception in 2 weeks. And this one had a lot more value because it came in the end zone, eliminated a scoring opportunity for the St. Louis, scoring opportunity for the Rams. I keep saying St. Louis. I was so used to that over the years. And that play was crucial, not just for that reason, but also because he and Matthew Stafford played a long time together in Detroit. They're really close friends. For him to get that interception that he called last January, by the way, when that trade first announced, he's like, I guess I'll have to pick off number 9. Well, he did. It was a really nice play. I thought he was the one bright spot all game long. There were some plays that he had to make that happened because the people in front of him were not executing or able to do their jobs. He's been put in tough spots all year, but I think he's playing at an all-pro level on a defense that doesn't have many guys that are excelling at all right now. He has been a consistent bright spot back there. So continue doing your thing, Quandre. I know he's getting frustrated with the way the defense is playing. You could hear it. You could see it with him talking to reporters after the game. I mean, he expects his defense to be better than this, and he's doing what he can. He needs other players to help him out on the defensive side of the football. And of course, Michael Dixon, I didn't even know you could punt it. He didn't know you could punt it twice after one was blocked. And that's what he ended up doing. One of the most incredible special teams plays. And not just that, the fact that he scooped it up one-handed, you could see the rugby background there. And then looked like maybe he was going to try to run for the first down, but way too much yardage. No way he was going to get there. So he punts it a second time, and it ends up going more than 60 yards. He's just a phenomenal talent. You rarely are ever going to see a punter that you want to stay to watch. But Michael Dixon is maybe that one guy in the NFL. He's just incredible. He's a magician back there. So kudos to him. Hell of a play in that game that ended up really swinging field position. And unfortunately, the Seahawks gave up a touchdown on the next drive anyway, but he was able to shift the field significantly compared to what it would have been if the Rams recovered that block punt or he was past the line of scrimmage and they decided it wasn't legal. They would have gotten a really good field position, and he made a remarkable play. As far as the bad, Seahawks had some botched chances in the first half. This is really, I think, what cost them the game more than anything. The defense did not play well, as we'll get to, but they had opportunities to have a bigger lead in the first half. They had a 4th down and short at the Rams 43 that they didn't go for. They decided not to, punted it away. I wondered if they should have been more aggressive there. The next drive, they had 4th and 2, ran it to the left. Alex Collins right at Aaron Donald. Didn't work out too well. Got stuffed right at the line of scrimmage, so it was a turnover on downs. So they lost a chance at getting points both of those drives when I think they could have gotten at least a field goal. And then after Quandre Diggs' interception, it was only 2 plays later, Russell Wilson gets picked. They might not have scored that drive, but at least have a first down or two and shift field position a little bit. So they missed that opportunity. And then the final drive of the half, just abysmal time management. After their first play, more than like 25 seconds, burned up the clock. And then DJ Dallas gets a 28-yard reception. They had 2 timeouts left. Use one of them. Instead, they let 10, 11 precious seconds melt off the clock. And then towards the end of the half, they thought they had a touchdown to Tyler Lockett. Dwayne Brown gets caught holding. It was a very obvious one. They had to call that one. If they would have saved those 10, 11 seconds, they might have been able to take another shot or two for the end zone. Instead, they had to settle for a field goal, and then Jason Myers missed it. He's now missed a couple of field goals this year, has not been as effective as he was in 2020. So that gave the Rams momentum. I mean, Seattle could have had a significantly bigger lead, and they were getting the ball to start the second half. So all of those missed opportunities, I think they left at least 9 points, if not more, on the scoreboard in the first half. And you can't do that against really good football teams like the Rams and expect to win. So that was a big issue. And then where is the pass rush? To me, that's the other big issue for the Seahawks defense. They have consistently all year been inconsistent rushing the passer. They'll have a drive where they're able to get 2 or 3 really nice pressures, maybe get a sack, and then you'll have 2 or 3 drives in a row that they don't do anything. Some of it been quarterbacks getting the ball out quickly. Some of it just been the pass rush just hasn't been able to figure things out. And so it's been a very inconsistent group. They have not met expectations. The rotations have been a little weird. Again, Alton Robinson only getting 6 snaps on Thursday night. I don't understand that. This is a kid that every time he's in the lineup seems to make something happen. They are getting good production from Darrell Taylor. Why not let Alton Robinson also get some snaps? 2 really good young pass rushers that are just going to get better. Give them the snaps. They need Carlos Dunlap to finish some of these promising rushes with some sacks. He has yet to get one through 5 games. This group has just been disappointing, and so you'd like to see them play better. This was a tough matchup, but this is a group that has talent. They should be able to get more consistent pressure and hits on the quarterback than what they are doing. And then last but not least, the ugly, everything else on this defense. I don't know at this point what is truly ailing this group. We're seeing the same execution issues week in, week out that are being made. They're same problems. They're having issues in the second half stopping the run. Run fits are off. They're missing tackles, bad angles. Secondary receivers are running 20 yards wide open and nobody's nearby. No adjustments are being made by the coaching staff, or if they are being made, they're not being executed at all in the field. It just is a complete systemic failure by the players and the coaches. And I personally believe, based on what I've seen now at this point, I don't think it has anything to do with continuity. I think Pete Carroll's right on that regard, but it's clearly evident that the communication is not there. We continue to see players not sure where they're supposed to be. There's scheme-related problems. Some of the players have already openly admitted that. So they have got to ratchet that up. They've got to figure out how to fix that. We're deep enough in the season now. Those issues should not be happening. And I think the coaching staff's got to take a lot of the blame for this. You've got talent. This team has way too many good players on defense to be as bad as they have been the first 5 games, and to see receivers just running wide open. And you can see the frustration in the players. You can feel the frustration from what they say, that, you know, it's a growing problem. There seems to be a growing divide between the players and the coaches. So they have got to figure out whatever needs to be done there to try to, bridge that gap a little bit and get these guys playing like they're capable of. Put them in a position they can be successful. Play players like Ryan Neal that have earned snaps. Another guy, just 6 snaps in this game. And I know the Rams can run the football well. That was part of it, as Pete Carroll explained, going with nickel packages instead of dime. But they were having so much success going after Jordan Brooks, particularly with those crossers to Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp. It just felt like a game that in the second half, more time, let Ryan Neal played so well against the 49ers on Sunday. There's just a lot of questions and a lot of uncertainty with that defense. How can you have the players they have and be this bad? They've got to figure it out. And really bad's not the term. Perfect word for it is ugly. That's been the Seahawks defense. They're on pace to just destroy the record for most yards to get up a season. And luckily they've been decent inside the 20s. Otherwise, they'd be giving up 30-plus points per game. No Russell Wilson. Now this defense has got to play better. And Pete Carroll, he's got to look in the mirror. Ken Norton Jr.'s got to look in the mirror. What can we do to get this group playing to its potential? And if they can't figure that out, then maybe it's time to make some coaching changes because there's too much talent. This group should be significantly better than what they are playing right now. And it's been frustrating for the fan base. It's been frustrating for the players. It's been frustrating for coaches. There's still a lot of time, but they want to make the playoffs, they're going to have to get that unit figured out. They got to get some big plays from Jamal Adams. They got to get big plays from Bobby Wagner. The stars have to play better. The role players, everybody has got to pick up their game. Quandre Diggs has been the one real bright spot. I mean, Bobby Wagner's played fine too, but they need big plays from their star players. The role guys have to be put in a position they can be successful. And a lot of that falls on the coaches. Really, the entire defensive side of the football, players, coaches, you name it, they've all got to be better moving forward. Betting on the NFL doesn't have to be a guessing game if you listen to the new Locked On Bets podcast, hosted by your boy Q and handicapping expert Lee Sterling. Get your daily picks, blowout specials, wrong team favorite picks, and Lee Sterling's lock of the day. Follow the Locked On Bets podcast, brought to you by betonline.ag, wherever you get podcasts. You can follow me on Twitter at Corbin Smith NFL. Make sure to check out Locked On Seahawks on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and the all-new Odyssey app. That's AUDACY. Coming up on Monday, I'll be rejoined by Rob Rang, and we're going to start shifting our focus towards Week 6, the Seahawks getting ready to face the Pittsburgh Steelers. Thanks for listening in. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Go Hawks.